Welcome back to the Talking Ketamine podcast. This is episode 74, Ketamine Dreams and Consciousness.
Did you know that even when ketamine completely disconnects patients from the outside world, their brains can still construct vivid, REM-like dreams? A landmark scoping review reveals that ketamine triggers high dream recall without causing dangerous intraoperative awareness, opening up exciting new possibilities for therapeutic mind states.
So for today's exploration, we are really unpacking something that blew my mind. I mean, we're looking at a massive scoping review.
Yeah, it's an incredibly comprehensive piece of research.
Right. I mean, we're talking about 157 different studies here, and this covers data all the way from 1921 up to 2024.
Over a century of data, yeah. And it spans over 87,000 participants.
87,000, that is just a staggering amount of people. And the whole mission of this overview is to really understand what happens in the brain when it dreams under anesthesia, specifically focusing on the unique effects of ketamine.
Exactly. Because for a long time, we didn't really have a clear picture of what the mind was doing in that state.
Right. Well, let's start with the thing that I think everyone listening is probably thinking about. Because if you have ever gone under the knife, you have probably had that terrifying thought right as the anesthesiologist asks you to count backward.
Oh, absolutely. The classic 10, 9, 8.
Exactly. You imagine you are lying on the stretcher, right?
Right.
The room is freezing cold. The lights are blindingly bright. And right before you drift off, this primal panic sets in.
Where's the fear of waking up?
Yes. You think, what if I wake up in the middle of this? What if I can feel the surgery, hear the doctors talking, but I'm completely paralyzed and, I just can't speak?
Right. Well, the clinical term for that nightmare scenario is intraoperative awareness. And to be clear, it is an incredibly traumatic adverse event.
I can only imagine. It sounds horrific.
It is. When a patient actually experiences the external environment during a procedure, it can lead to severe PTSD. And because of that fear, the standard assumption in medicine for decades was that the only quote-unquote good anesthesia was total blank slate unconsciousness.
Meaning the brain is just entirely shut off.
Exactly. The thought process was, if the brain is completely quiet, the patient is safe. Period. But this massive scoping review, which again synthesized a century of data across 87,000 people, it reveals a fundamentally different reality about what the mind is capable of doing in the dark.
Okay, so we are looking at this phenomenon that researchers call disconnected consciousness.
Right.
But, I mean, to someone listening, the idea of being conscious while under anesthesia sounds exactly like that nightmare scenario we just talked about.
It sounds contradictory, yeah.
Yeah, but it is actually the exact opposite, right?
It is. So disconnected consciousness means the external sensory inputs, like the scalpel, the monitor beeps, the temperature of the room, all of that is completely blocked from reaching the brain's processing centers.
Okay, so you're insulated.
Totally insulated from physical reality. But internally, the mind is not turned off at all. It is still generating this rich, continuous stream of internal experiences. Essentially, it is dreaming.
Okay, so I want to introduce a way to think about this. It's like a movie projector playing in an offline cinema.
Oh, I like that.
Right. The doors to the theater are bolted shut. The soundproofing is absolute. No one from the outside world can get in. But the movie playing on the screen inside is incredibly vivid.
That's a perfect analogy, yeah.
But I do have to push back here for a second, just on behalf of anyone listening who might be feeling a little, skeptical.
Sure. Go for it.
If a patient wakes up from surgery and says, wow, I was awake, I remember all these vivid colors and movements, how do we know for an absolute fact that they aren't just hallucinating the actual surgical trauma?
Like their brain is masking the pain.
Exactly. Maybe the brain is taking the pain of the scalpel and turning it into some bizarre, colorful dream. How do we actually know those cinema doors are locked?
That is such a crucial question. And honestly, for a long time, the medical community struggled with that exact thing because it is incredibly difficult to measure a subjective internal state while someone is having major surgery.
Right. You can't exactly ask them how they're feeling.
Exactly. But what researchers did across these 157 studies was track the long-term psychological outcomes. They looked at tens of thousands of patients who reported these vivid dreams.
Okay.
And the logic is, if those dreams were actually distorted memories of surgical pain, we would see a strong correlation with adverse postoperative outcomes. We'd see anxiety disorders, PTSD, physiological stress markers.
Oh, I see. We would see the trauma lingering long after the surgery was over.
We would. But across this enormous sample size, The data shows absolutely zero correlation between these specific anesthesia dreams and actual surgical awareness or PTSD.
Wow, really? Zero correlation.
Zero. The psychological profiles of the patients who dream are completely healthy. And that is how the review definitively confirmed that the brain is truly fully isolated from the physical reality of the operation. The cinema doors are definitely locked.
That is so reassuring. So the dreaming state itself is completely safe.
100% safe.
Okay, well, now that we know we're safe, the natural next question is, what are these movies actually like? Because if we have a century of data, we must know what kind of films are playing in there. And why is ketamine so different?
Yeah, so the texture of the dreams changes entirely depending on the specific anesthetic agent used. The review found that, first, dream recall is generally higher in experimental settings than in busy clinical environments.
That makes sense, yeah. Less going on around you when you wake up.
Right. But regardless of the setting, ketamine consistently produces the absolute highest rates of dreaming. I mean, alongside propofol, they are the top two.
Let's compare those two then. Because if someone listening has had a minor procedure like, colonoscopy or maybe getting their wisdom teeth pulled, they might have been given propofol.
Very likely, yes. Propofol is incredibly common, and it does produce high rates of dream reports, but the content is vastly different from ketamine.
How so?
Well, propofol dreams tend to be very static. A patient might wake up and remember just a single image of a familiar place or a vague, fleeting concept.
Like looking at a photograph.
Exactly like a photograph. But ketamine creates a dynamic motion picture. The experiences reported under ketamine are described in the data as highly active.
So what are people actually seeing or feeling?
Patients report sensations of floating, moving through space, interacting with complex, vivid environments. It very closely resembles natural REM sleep.
Wow, so it's a fully immersive, narrative-driven state.
Completely immersive. But I do want to address a lingering narrative in medicine here, because for decades there was a hyper-focus on something called emergence delirium, or emergence reactions.
Wait, aren't ketamine dreams supposed to be frightening? Because I've definitely heard older stories about bad trips or people waking up super agitated.
Right, that's exactly the myth I'm talking about. The older medical texts always warned about ketamine causing terrifying hallucinations.
Yeah, so why would that be the case if the data shows these dreams are just like regular REM sleep?
Well, historically, doctors were only observing the patient from the outside.
Right.
So if a patient waking up from anesthesia looks restless, or they're muttering, or maybe their heart rate is slightly elevated, the clinical assumption was just, oh, they must be having a terrible, agonizing experience.
Oh, I see. So the outside didn't match the inside.
Not at all. When researchers actually started interviewing the patients systematically across these decades of studies, the data told a completely different story.
What did they find?
The scoping review aggregated the emotional tone of these dreams and found that the vast majority of experiences reported under ketamine were profoundly positive.
Really?
Yes, positive, pleasant, or at worst, completely neutral. The incidence of genuinely terrifying or negative dreams is statistically very, very small.
So that patient thrashing on the bed might just be like dreaming about swimming in a vibrant ocean.
Exactly. They aren't in distress at all. And knowing that you are highly likely to have a vivid, dynamic, pleasant dream, it's incredibly reassuring for a patient.
It completely reframes the entire experience.
Right.
But I want to look under the hood here.
Yeah.
Because if I am anesthetized, how is my brain physically generating this rich, positive motion picture?
That gets into some fascinating neuroimaging data. So Table 3 of the study breaks down the specific brain signatures behind these states, and they use a metric called the Perturbational Complexity Index, or
Okay.
PCI.
PCI, okay. And what is the easiest way to understand that?
Imagine researchers tapping on the brain with a magnetic pulse.
Like using transcranial magnetic stimulation?
Yes, exactly. TMS. They deliver a precise magnetic pulse to the cortex, and then they use an EEG to measure the echo of that pulse. They want to see how complex the brain's response is to that single tap.
Oh, I like that. It's like dropping a pebble into a still pond to see what kind of ripples it makes.
That's a great way to picture it. So let's look at anesthetics that do not produce dreams first. Xenon, for example, is an inhaled gas, and the data shows it produces almost zero dream reports. And propofol, in deep surgical doses, also drastically reduces dreaming. Under these agents, the brain loses what we call integration.
Meaning the different parts of the brain literally stop talking to each other.
Precisely. The GABA receptors are completely flooded. So if you drop that TMS pebble into a brain under deep propofol, it just goes plop.
Just a plop. No ripples.
Right. You get a localized, stereotypical slow wave. The ripple doesn't travel across the pond. It doesn't create any intricate interacting patterns. The PCI is very low, which indicates a state of true, profound unconsciousness.
So basically, propofol is like unplugging the TV entirely. You just get a blank black screen and zero signal processing.
Exactly.
But then what is ketamine doing?
Ketamine operates on a completely different mechanism. Instead of flooding the global off switches, ketamine primarily blocks NMDA receptors, and this effectively severs the connection between the cortex, which is the thinking part of your brain, and the lower sensory relays that bring in information from the outside world.
So it unplugs the antenna.
Yes. The live broadcast from the surgery room is gone.
But the screen isn't black. So it's like you unplug the antenna, but you put in a 4K Blu-ray disc.
A 4K Blu-ray playing at maximum volume. The hardware of the television is fully powered up. Because the cortex itself isn't shut down, it maintains a wake-like complexity.
Wow.
If you drop that TMS pebble into a brain on ketamine, the ripples bounce all over the pond in beautiful, chaotic, intricate patterns. The PCI remains remarkably high.
So it's comparable to when you are completely awake.
Yes, it preserves its integration and differentiation. The different areas of the brain are still communicating and rendering all this complex information. It is just sourcing the movie from inside the machine rather than from a live broadcast.
That is wild.
And the review goes even further into the mechanics. They measured something called the spectral exponent.
Okay, what is the spectral exponent?
You can think of it as the background noise or the baseline electrical hum of the brain. During normal wakefulness, there is a ton of high-frequency activity. The brain is just buzzing with fast waves. When you administer propofol, that high-frequency buzz drops off a cliff. The higher frequencies disappear entirely, and you are left with these slow, deep, rolling waves.
But I'm guessing ketamine is different.
With ketamine, the spectral exponent stays almost exactly similar to full wakefulness. The high-frequency activity is kept completely alive.
So the engine is still revving at highway speeds, even though the car is securely parked in a locked garage.
Exactly. And this proves something monumental for neuroscience. Dreaming under ketamine anesthesia is a completely distinct neurobiological state.
Because it's not wakefulness, but it's not unconsciousness either.
Right. It is categorically separate from full connected wakefulness because you can't feel the outside world. But it is also categorically separate from the true unconsciousness of a deep propofol coma because your cortex is highly active. It is a unique third state of being.
A third state of being. That's just staggering. So if this high-frequency buzz is still happening in my brain while I'm on the operating table, does that mean what I do right before I go under actually influences the movie?
It absolutely does.
Let's connect this back to the practical reality of being a patient. Because how can we use this knowledge of the ketamine Blu-ray to actually help people?
This is where the review provides immense clinical value. The researchers isolated several key predictors of dream recall from Table 2 of the study.
Okay, so what factors make someone more likely to remember these internal movies?
Well, age plays a role. Younger patients generally have higher dream recall. The speed of emergence is also critical.
Speed of emergence, meaning how fast they wake up.
Right. Patients who have faster, shorter emergence times are much more likely to remember their dreams.
You know, that makes intuitive sense. It is like waking up abruptly from a deep REM cycle in your own bed. You usually remember the dream you were just pulled out of really vividly.
Exactly.
But if you slowly drift into wakefulness over an hour on a Sunday morning, the dream usually just sort of fades away before you even open your eyes.
That's a great comparison. And the monitoring equipment tells a similar story. The researchers noted that higher BIS scores upon awakening correlate with better recall.
Okay, and a BIS score, the bispectral index, is basically just that sticker they put on the patient's forehead to read their brainwaves, right?
Essentially, yes. It's an algorithm that translates EEG data into a number between 0 and 100 to measure the depth of anesthesia.
Got it.
So a higher BIS score as the patient wakes up means their cortical electrical activity is returning to a wakeful state faster and more intensely, which naturally helps lock those dream memories into conscious recall.
Okay, so age, emergence time, and BIS scores. Was there anything else?
There is another variable, and it's something that is so easily missed in standard hospital procedures. They found that the timing of the interview is vital.
Oh, like would you actually ask the patient about their dream?
Yes. If a clinician asks a patient about their dreams immediately upon extubation, meaning the exact moment the anesthesiologist pulls the breathing tube out and the patient regains airway control, the recall rate is exponentially higher.
Compared to what, asking them later?
Right, compared to a nurse asking them about it in the recovery ward 3 hours later. These states of disconnected consciousness are fragile upon waking. They evaporate really quickly if they aren't verbalized.
Wow, okay. But out of all the predictors the researchers identified, I know there's one that completely shifted my perspective on what it means to be a patient.
The preoperative priming.
Yes, the review found that preoperative priming and suggestion directly increased dream recall and actually influenced the content of the dreams.
It's incredible. They looked at studies where patients engaged in specific mental preparation right before induction. Things like guided role play, intentional visualization, or even just having a deliberate, focused conversation about a pleasant scenario.
I mean, think about the implications for someone listening. Imagine you are sitting in the pre-op area tomorrow. You're in the gown, you're nervous, the IV is in your arm. Usually you are just passively waiting for the lights to go out.
You feel totally powerless.
Exactly. But this data tells us that we aren't just passive observers. If we know the brain is going to play a movie, and we know our pre-surgery state affects it, we can actually help direct the movie.
You are actively writing the script for the 4K Blu-ray your brain is about to play. By managing your mindset, practicing visualization, or setting intentions before you go under, you're building the architectural foundation for the disconnected brain.
How does that change the way a clinician actually talks to a patient in that pre-op room? Because, the fear of anesthesia is just so deeply ingrained in our culture.
It completely transforms the pre-surgical conversation. An anesthesiologist or a surgeon can sit down with a terrified patient and say, look, you are perfectly safe. You will not feel this surgery. The doors to the cinema will be locked.
Right.
But your brain is going to remain highly active, and you are overwhelmingly likely to have a vivid, pleasant dream. In fact, if you want to think about your favorite hiking trail or a beach you love, right now, there is a very good chance you will spend the surgery exploring that exact place.
That is so powerful. It changes the narrative from I am being put to sleep to I am going on a secure internal journey.
And it vastly reduces patient anxiety. But the implications of this go so far beyond just making a standard surgery less scary.
Right, because this opens up future therapeutic avenues, doesn't it?
It does. When we look at ketamine's disconnected consciousness, we are observing a state where the brain is highly plastic, bursting with high-frequency activity, capable of generating complex narratives, all while being completely insulated from the physical stresses of reality.
We are essentially looking at a hyperreceptive sandbox for the mind.
Exactly. If we can reliably induce this unique third state of being, where the patient is safe from external triggers but internally generating positive dynamic motion pictures, the applications for mental health recovery are just staggering.
We could actively use this for things like severe trauma processing.
Theoretically, yes, in a completely protected internal environment. We aren't just putting people to sleep anymore. We are learning how to harness the anesthesia dream state as a dedicated tool for psychiatric healing.
It is incredibly inspiring to think that within this locked, offline cinema, deep psychological healing can take place.
It really is.
As we wrap up this overview of the data, I want to offer a final thought for you to ponder long after you finish listening. Consider how profound it is that your consciousness refuses to just switch off when the external lights go out. The fact that your brain, when entirely sealed off from the physical world, will automatically start building rich, complex, beautiful realities all on its own, it suggests something deeply poetic about human nature.
It really highlights the resilience of the mind.
It suggests that creating meaning and generating narrative isn't just a party trick the brain does to pass the time. It is what the brain fundamentally is. Your mind is an endless world builder regardless of the darkness outside.
Beautifully said.
It is so reassuring to learn that having vivid dreams under ketamine is completely safe and does not mean a patient was aware during surgery.
Absolutely. Ketamine shows us that the brain can stay remarkably active and creative even while disconnected from the external world.
Science continues to show us how remarkable the mind really is. Thanks for listening to the Talking Ketamine podcast. We'll catch you on the next one.